Hey everyone, Brian here from Vintage Classic Specialist. Happy Friday to everyone. Time for another episode of Day in the Life of Vintage Classic Specialist. So if you've got a keen eye, then you know exactly what car this is. You might have seen it on the thumbnail of the video as well. I will talk about what this bad boy is doing back in the shop here. But first off, let me talk about what else happened around here today. So this beautiful 56 Beetle here that we've done a number of things on, mainly the interior and a cosmetic. Here, I'm going to show it just because I think it's pretty. Cosmetic restoration of the motor. This is going to clear here. Yes. So yeah, we did that. It was pretty ugly before. Now it looks pretty, just like we like it. Anyway, so enough yapping about those things. If you saw the episode yesterday, you know that one of his vent window latches broke, and as it turned out, it had actually broken at some point in the past and been JB welded. So I recommended that we replace both sides because they're fatigued and old, and they were kind of pitted and stuff. Anyway, they looked okay. Had this one not broke, I wouldn't have seen any real issue with just leaving them both. But since this one broke, it's like let's just go ahead and replace those. So I had yesterday pulled out the vent wing assemblies and removed the glass from the frames because, of course, to replace the latch, you have to have the frame as a bare frame with no glass or anything in it. And so anyway, so I did that yesterday. So today went ahead and riveted in the new latches. So the rivets go in. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Focus. Yeah, anyway, so there's the heads of the rivets right there. So you put the rivets in from the bottom, and then we've got a tool that we use where we basically pound those rivets down flat from inside here. And then at that point, the seal and the glass go in, they get pressed in. We've got, of course, a special tool to do that. And then comes the fun part, and fun part is with air quotes, because putting the vent window assembly and the seal in early cars is kind of a pain in the ass, guys. So that's one of the few things that I can say got easier on late model cars. And so by late, I mean 65 and up, when the vent window had sort of like its own built-in outer frame that the seal went on, and then that whole assembly kind of goes in there. On these, you've got the vent wing window itself that's got a post sticking out of it, and then it's got this hinge with a little bracket on it with a couple of screws. So you've got to kind of like start the seal up to about this point and then shove this rod through here. And then you've got to take the seal and get it around the upper part of this hinge. And then with the seal kind of pulled out of the way, you've got to put a couple screws up in here. And then you go and you finish putting the seal in around here. So it's definitely a process to put these in. Again, much easier on later cars where you pretty much have the whole thing assembled very easily, I might add, on the bench, and then it just kind of like goes in there. So one of the few things that I think got a lot easier actually on later cars. There's others too, but that's kind of one of the main ones that sticks to my mind, where they actually made it easier to assemble. So anyhow, so this car got its 2 new vent wings today, and then of course went ahead and put the beautiful door panels that Santiago made back in, and the handles and all that. And while I was at it, put on new Brazilian, you guys knew I was going to say that, new Brazilian door to body seals. And look at that, they're so squishy, and the door closes so nice. So yes, Brazilian door seals. Anyway, so yeah, I went ahead and put those on too. And that was about it for this puppy. I think the owner and I talked, and we're going to kind of see where we are presently with the bill and then he's going to decide if he wants us to do a few other things. He's got a list of some other like relatively small things, but you know, everyone's got a budget, so we're going to go through and see where we are now that we've done, you know, kind of like the essential things that he wanted done, and now see if we're going to also do some other kind of like smallish things on the car while we've got it. So anyway, that was part of my day. The earlier part of my day, I spent actually legitimately bolting this up onto the car. So yesterday, when I showed it in the video, it was just kind of like slipped on there, but not really bolted up. So today, this morning, the exhaust is officially bolted on here. Everything's tight. Everything's got gaskets, hardware, etc. So yeah, after I had Brian Washburn's crew over there shorten this side by about 6/10 of an inch, pretty much went on perfectly at that point. As it turns out, if I had to do it over again, now that I see how everything is laying, I probably would have had him do maybe half an inch, or excuse me, yeah, half an inch instead of 6/10 of an inch. This definitely could have been a little bit closer here. And the only reason I bring that up is I'm not super happy with how far the heater box tube is extending in here. I don't know where it's going. It's definitely in far enough, but I would have felt better if it was in a little further. So I don't think it's going to cause an issue, but if I had to do it over again, probably would have taken like 1/10 of an inch less out of this thing. But that having been said, I don't think the exhaust sealing is going to be any issue at all. Just, we like for things to be perfect, and this was like literally that much off from being what I would consider perfect. But anyway, so yeah, that went on. And then I went ahead and bolted up the lower tins, sleds, some people call them here, that deflect the air up underneath there and kind of keep the airflow wrapping around the cylinders so that the bottom of the cylinders also get some airflow versus all the air just shooting out the bottom of the motor. So these are good to run, especially on stock motors when you're able. Almost no one puts those on performance motors, and they don't seem to be burning up their motors left and right. But when we're building a motor that's mostly stock, we like to include those, especially if the heater boxes are being used. It makes a lot of sense to use all that tin. What else, guys? I think, yeah, putting the exhaust on was kind of the main thing, and then the tins underneath there. The only other thing I did was, so these manifolds, again, that I got from Brothers, have a crossover tube ports on them, and I was taking some measurements on the car and just kind of comparing where those things were and the carburetors to the sound mats on the sides of the engine compartment. And these carbs are going to be a little tight in there. I'm not worried that they're not going to fit, but that having been said, what I did was I ran a tap through these holes to get these to go in like another couple turns or so, which doesn't sound like much, but you know, maybe in like 1/8 of an inch further, just to give like that much more clearance between the sound insulation over here on the side of the engine compartment and this. I don't like things touching that shouldn't be touching, so pretty much drove these in as far as I could by running a tap in them. So did that on both sides, and then went ahead and sealed them up. So the manifolds now are officially done. I've done that. I talked yesterday about grinding these a little bit to get the nuts to clear. By the way, somebody was asking about it. It's pretty normal, sadly, for aftermarket intake manifolds like these or ones for Webers or whatever to need some clearancing. They almost all seem to need it around where the hardware goes on. I don't know why they don't just finish them that way. I guess it's like for them another process to do after the casting procedure and stuff like that, and so they just kind of leave it up to the end user. It's mildly annoying, but it's something that I'm kind of used to. But anyway, so yeah, if anyone goes to get a set of these from Brothers Machine Shop, yeah, just be aware you're going to have to spend a little bit of time on them to get the hardware to fit in there nicely. And I did spend a little bit of time cleaning the lower sort of flange up there as well. You'll see what I'm talking about if you get a pair. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, duh. Other thing I did was I went ahead and put on the aftermarket, I don't know what they call this thing, super duper cool flow, whatever, impy aluminum oil cooler. So yeah, I went ahead and put that on, and it looks great on there. It's kind of too bad in a way that no one will see it after the fan shroud goes on, because it is kind of a piece of art. But anyway, that went on too. So that was it for this one. All right, guys, let's talk about the VW Halen bug here. So the owner called me maybe a week or so ago, and he was saying that his radio wouldn't shut off, which is super weird, because normally the way they're wired in, or the way this one is wired in, and all of them are intended to be, is when you turn off the ignition switch, then the radio shuts off. Like, the radio is only on if the key is in the on position. The way the radio is wired, though, there is a wire that's hot all the time, and that basically keeps, I guess, the radio's memory as far as like your station presets and stuff like that, and probably also is providing the power for like the amplifier circuit. And then the other wire on it, the other power wire, is one that you put on the ignition, where it's only hot when the ignition is turned on, and that's the one that like actually wakes the radio up. Anyway, his radio was not shutting off, and he wanted to bring the car in for me to take a look at that. And then he's still not happy with how the Geenberg shifter on here is shifting. And it felt good to me when he left the shop, but I felt it after he brought it in, and it feels terrible, guys. I don't know well, I have some ideas what may be going on with this shifter. I'm going to pull it off and take it over to Berg on Monday, who luckily is probably not even 2 miles from our shop. I have some ideas of why this shifter is causing us so many issues. I'm going to bring it over to Berg and have a chat with those guys and see what their thoughts are. Because yeah, the Berg shifter should be amazing, and it's not. And again, I'll let you guys know when I figure out for sure what the issue is with that. So so that's the other thing. The other thing is, I think his idle speed is set a little bit low, and I think it died on him a couple times, maybe like in traffic when it was fully warmed up. So not a big deal. You can bump his idle speed up maybe a couple hundred RPMs or so. It was super low, like maybe 800. And so yeah, I'll bump it up a little bit, and that'll take care of that. The other thing he wants us to address, which we are going to do on our dime, is a little paint warranty work. So his detailer found a crack in the paint right there, and so we're gonna go ahead and cover that and fix that up. So yeah, I gotta get some paint mixed up to match this, and then Renee will remove what's going on there and take it down to metal and do whatever he needs to do, paint it, blend it, etc., and it'll look amazing. So yeah, I felt kind of bad. The customer, he literally just had his car in a couple weeks ago or so, and we did a tune-up and a bunch of other stuff, and then I think within, I don't know, like a week or so is when his radio started acting weird and stuff like that. So I think the radio is probably an issue in and of its own. I don't think it has to do with how the radio is wired. And so I will probably be calling Retro Sound on Monday and kind of run the symptoms by them. The funny thing is that when the car came in, the battery again was dead. And so I disconnected the battery, charged the battery, and then reconnected the battery. And then boom, the radio started working correctly. Like, I plugged the battery back in, the radio was not on, turned on the ignition, started the car, the radio came on and started playing music and doing all the things radios are supposed to do. Turned the ignition off, the radio literally says goodbye across the screen on it, and it turned off. And I started and turned off the car several times, and every time the radio behaved exactly as it should. So I don't think it's like a loose wire or any weirdness with the wiring of the radio. I think this radio may have some kind of defect in it. However, I will pull the wiring cover and stuff like that probably tomorrow and start poking around in there and see if I can find any potential fault as far as the wiring on the radio. But again, I think he's got maybe a defective unit. And but anyway, so we will of course get to the bottom of it. So that is what this guy is back in for. And let's talk about this one for a minute. I will give you guys a sneak peek of the seat covers for it here in our little upholstery shop. So here we go. Seat covers are pretty much all made. So let's see, you should have 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3. Yep, there they are, all 4 pieces. So sneak peek of those. He's working right now on doing the padding and stuff like that on the seats themselves. Both of my guys, Renee and Santiago, are actually both taking tomorrow off, which I'm very happy for them. They're going to spend some time with their family and stuff like that. Those guys have been working 6 days a week. I work 6 or 7, but that's kind of the price you pay for being the shop owner. But yeah, I was actually very glad to hear that those guys are taking a regular 2-day weekend. So good for them. So yeah, hopefully Monday those seat covers will go on and I'll be showing you guys those. So anyway, yeah, I will be here tomorrow and holding down the fort and probably see if I can see what's going on with this one as far as the radio is concerned. And that's probably about all I'll do. And so anyway, yeah, look out for a video tomorrow. And other than that, I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.